does success have to define capability?
Success has to define capability is because you can, because if the end result of that is a negative end result, then it shouldn't be capable.
How can democracy not be a form of self-government when it is the people who choose the electoral officers?
Revert back to our definition of a self-government. The definition that you provide us is too broad. You tell us that it's a group of people that govern themselves within a land. That's true, but that can be applicable to literally any country in the United States. A self-government means that people are able to vote and govern all for themselves without the existence of an outside force of a government.
But an outside force would be something that opposed the initial relation to self-government. So wouldn't the people stand within self-government if they are choosing to elect their officials?
Can you elaborate on that?
So the people that elect the officials that make the decisions for us are elected by us. So essentially we are making the decisions, we're just having someone represent us, correct?
But the issue is that these people often don't make the decisions that we want them to make. That doesn't define a self-government at all.
Based off of what?
Like, for example, a lot of the United States citizens vote for representatives in Congress, right? But most of the time, the United States citizens are not agreeing with the voting records of congressmen in Congress right now. That's obviously showing you there's a disconnect between our representatives and our own citizens, correct?
Correct, but are those decisions being made by the people?
Those decisions are not being made by the people.
They're being made by the people that we elected, correct?
But that still doesn't mean that they're being made by the people directly.
I'm asking you if the decisions that were being made by the elected officers that we voted into office, they're still making decisions, correct?
The elected officials are.
Who we elect, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But that still doesn't directly mean that the people that the people voting are making the decisions, because we have congressmen and representatives that vote for us. We don't have the voice, they do.
However, they get into office from our vote, correct?
Yes, what is your point?
Okay, so moving on from that, crime cannot relate to the capability of self-government because that does not reflect on the majority, correct?
No, we give you a lot of examples of self-governments that fail because crime rates are so high because people make bad decisions.
People make bad decisions, but they're still decisions, correct?
When these decisions are showing you that these self-governments are collapsing in on itself, then that's showing you the capability isn't there, right?
The question is whether or not people are capable, not whether or not people are capable of not committing crimes or not committing certain acts to make a government insufficient, correct?
No, we're showing you that people can't be capable of self-governance when they make bad decisions that cause the collapse of that said self-government.
Reserve for like 30 seconds. And addressing the fact that we elect representatives to make decisions, that's not always the case. There are instances in the United States where people directly vote on issues. That's called a referendum. For instance, we can look to the recent medical marijuana referendum in Florida, where people directly voted on an issue of whether they wanted to legalize marijuana for medical purposes. And even though that was defeated, that was a decision that people made. They decided to govern themselves and to make a decision to not allow medical marijuana to pass in Congress or to become used in Florida for those purposes. And that's still a decision that we as a people make. And concerning how representatives don't address our interests once they are in office and therefore that is incapable of self-government, if a representative doesn't fit in or doesn't follow along with what the majority of Americans want, that could be 50.00%, 1% of Americans. If they don't feel that person is capable and that person is not representing their interests, we don't re-elect that person. We get to make that decision. And therefore, we are self-governing ourselves when we elect those people. Therefore, self-government can exist, and it does exist, and people are capable of self-government.
Soviet Russia, the 1980s. The government was corrupt, there was tyranny widespread throughout the country, and the government wasn't looking out for its people. This is why governments need to be, their best interest needs to be protecting their people and protecting the liberties that we all have today. That is the most important part of government, because that is why governments are there in the first place. They say that the United States of America is an example of self-government because we are a democracy. The problem with this is that, as we all know, our Congress is currently gridlocked by political posturing, and there is simply no progress being done in Congress right now. We see this through also other actions in the government that simply aren't in the best interest of the people. They can't look at this as self-government, because if it was true self-government, all of us today would have a voice in it, and it wouldn't just be some politician sitting in the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., making decisions that aren't best for us. Remember, the resolution talks about if people are capable of self-government, not necessarily creating self-government. Although all of us could create a self-government if we want to, the resolution asks if we're capable of self-governance. What that means is that we have to have effective governments that protect us all. That being said, our John Locke example tells you that the social contract is what governments are there for, and that it needs to be, that governments need to play in the best interest of the people. They talk about the Constitution, and we agree the Constitution is a great piece of a great document that protects the people from the government, and we completely agree with that. But if that was true, then the things that were going on today in Congress wouldn't be going on today, and the politicians would act in the best interest of us. Then remember on their case, when they talk about how we're a democracy, we tell you that we're a republic, and we elect representatives that aren't even really going to do in Congress what they actually say they're going to do. And it actually tells you that democracy is not capable of self-government because democracy is different than representative democracy. For all these reasons, we hate it.
Oh, you can set it. Okay, all right. I'm gonna ask the first question. Okay. So, what are the unethical things going on with Congress that you speak of in specific?
I think that the role of government should be to act in the best interest of the people. And when the people who have common sense who want things done that are in the best interest for them, and none of that's happening, even if we have congressmen that believe that, we're not doing anything about it, that's not a self-government. Because if it was, we would all have a voice in what's actually happening, and the government would be doing things that are best for us.
But what would be an example of what Congress is lacking to help provide for us that you're speaking of?
Okay, let's look at overall statistics where we tell you the majority of American citizens are at odds with the United States Congress. They don't agree with what the United States Congress is doing. Our own elected officials are not voting in the ways that we want them to vote on legislation, and therefore
show that people are unsatisfied with where a majority of people are unsatisfied with how people are voting
Well,
in Congress.
for example, in 2000, the election, the outcome of the election may have been beneficial to us today, but the popular vote was actually with the candidate who lost. The candidate who didn't have the popular vote but had the electoral system on his side won, and that shows that the American political system doesn't actually work in favor of individuals.
But the electoral college is elected by the people, correct?
Well, like some states have winner take all, which means that if they just get
We're not saying how the delegates are gonna vote. We're asking how the electors are who made their elected positions.
well, they're not.
United States citizens vote their representatives into the seats that they have, but that doesn't mean that these representatives are voting in the way that the United States citizens want them to vote. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How do you substantiate the claim that democracy is synonymous with self-government?
Based on the definitions that we have for democracy and self-government, that's how we substantiate that claim.
Okay, so perfect. Let's move on to your definition of self-government. Can you define that?
A government or control of a country by its own members.
Okay, so does that fit into like literally every single nation in the world?
Not necessarily. That doesn't well, if it fits into every nation in the world, that means that every nation in the world is a self-government. And therefore
No, it
people are
means
capable of self-government.
the definition
Because
you-
therefore every nation in the world would be a self-government based on your definition.
The definition you provide is so broad, and it's just telling you that government exists. Yes, but that doesn't talk to you about the specific definition of self-government. We tell you that self-government means that it doesn't have outside factors that influence it.
I said,
To reserve a minute for scrap.
You have a minute, 22 left.
Okay, yeah. Should I take my shirt off? I'd like to start off with a quote from a letter to Edward Everett in 1824 that says, "The qualifications for self-government society are not innate, they are the result of habit and long training." So basically this means that we have done this from our past experiences. We've gotten this far from something that we've learned, that's something that we've inherited from nature, from something that we've brought upon ourselves from self-governance. And this asides with the Declaration of Independence, which is one of the most astounding documents that we withhold in the United States. And it grants us these 5 principles that, 1, God grants the people the rights, and 2, the government must protect those rights. 3, these are consented by the people within the government. So which means that we are making the decisions to consent to to these rights and that these are applicable to our lives and our lifestyles and that it gives us the pursuit of happiness. And if this goes against our happiness or what we want or what we need, we have the right to revolt against our own government. And lastly, the fifth principle is change the institution of what the government has been established on. To say that we lack self-governance says that we lack the United States of America. And clearly, the United States of America is still active. It is in fact so active that we are in the middle of campaigning, electing our new president of the United States. And to show that there is no progress, that would conclude that we aren't electing a new president of the United States, we aren't electing a new Supreme Court justice, we aren't doing these referendums that Ryan was just mentioning about the marijuana legalization. There's progress in America. There's other progresses within other nations that might not be favorable, they might not be good, but there is progress, and it shows capability amongst the people to have self-governance.
Everyone ready?
Yeah.
Ready? Okay. Let's start with the first voting issue of today, which is democracy. Our opponents come up here and tell you that democracy exists, and that proves that self-government is possible. But remember, the resolution today tells you that people are capable of self-government. That means maintaining it in the long haul for the better of the people within that government. This doesn't, just the fact that democracy exists doesn't prove to you that the people are capable of maintaining that long self-government in the interest of themselves. And so let's move on to the second voting issue of today, which is that they're able to make their own decisions. That's great. We completely agree with that, but they're not able to make good decisions. And at that point, that's when the good decisions come to manifest themselves in the collapse of self-government. We give you the example of tribal nations, where their crime rates are so high that it's a lot higher in tribal nations, a lot higher than the average crime rates in America. We give you two further examples that show the collapse of self-government because of these reasons, because they're not able to make good decisions. For example, in British Columbia, which is a territory under self-government, their own government is collapsing because of the decisions that they make. And then further, Yukon, which is a current self-government, tells you that they're worried that their own system of politics is going to collapse because of the system of self-government, and there's no structure to that. And so with that, let's move on to our contention, where we talk to you about how first, self-governments aren't accountable enough to constitute a successful government. Pay attention to our definition, where we tells you capability is just not the ability to accomplish something, but it's the ability to do so effectively and doing it well. The purpose of the government in the first place is to make sure that the people are satisfied and their standards of living are high. And that's not something a self-government can do. And so let's look to political participation. Declining commitment to government right now, it's declining. That's exactly what Charlie tells you in our case. Democracy is the basic prerequisite, and if people aren't voting or politically participating, self-government isn't going to work. For these reasons, I urge your vote in the con.
Can the audience ask questions?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes. Thank you, young people, for all that you're doing. I really appreciate that. Having taught our Constitution for many years, I do need to correct you, and that is we are not a democracy. We never were. We are a representative republic. And that is why our representatives vote for us. But, so the word democracy means a majority and that everybody votes, for everybody, and we're not that way. We're represented. We vote, as Ryan said, we vote for our representatives, and they in turn vote for us. And so please correct the fact that under the United States Constitution, we are a representative republic. We are not a democracy.
Tamsin?
I think you would have to ask yourself in this discussion, is one single person capable of self-governance? Is one single person capable of making correct, useful decisions in life that will make that person successful and happy? And then you have to consider that there's a time course in human events, which means that at one given time, one may make a mistaken decision, but does have the capability later on to reverse or correct that decision so that having gone off the path that will lead to happiness and success, you may come back onto that path. And if one person is capable of doing that, then a group of people should be capable of doing that. And if one person is not capable of doing that, then there's nobody who's capable of carrying on a successful government which will lead to successful, happy populace. There are cases in history, for example, only a few, also where there was a government but not a state. Medieval Ireland and Iceland were such examples, where there was really no state, but the people did govern themselves. And the earlier Indian tribes also did that.
Thank you, Tamsin. Dr. Swire, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I just wanted to say that having been on the debate team many years ago, I thought that you all did a wonderful job.
Everybody
is we have young people here, this young man over here is taking notes. And folks over here are taking notes. You are the young men and women in this room are the future of America. This is an important debate that's going to go on throughout your lives. Whatever you do, I don't care what business you're in, or if you enter government, or you enter the teaching profession, it's very important to remember what you said today, because it's going to impact you, your families, and your children. Thank you very much.
Barbara, would you like to speak?
Just a quick thing. It's an old joke, and you may have heard it before, but it's easy to remember. A democracy is when 2 lambs and a wolf vote on what's for dinner. Okay? When you have a constitutional representative republic, the lambs have a representative and the wolves have a representative. So now we have a standoff. And the lamb goes home and eats something else, and the wolf goes home and eats something else. But if you can remember that, a democracy is 2 lambs and a wolf.
The 2 wolves and a lamb.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. Sorry, I'm getting the old joke wrong, and I'm old enough to remember it. Yes, 2 wolves and a lamb deciding on what's for dinner. But that's an easy way for you to remember the difference in a democracy.
We have almost a half an hour left. And I know Steve has something planned that he's anxious to share with you. And I know that Carol wants to make sure that people who did not sign in do sign in. And she has a comment, right? Make it.
Just one.
Make it.
Okay, if anybody did not sign in, I'll pass this around. And if anyone would like America's quick big picture, and if you put your email on I can send it to you. I believe, and I think you were wonderful today.
Well, wait a minute, can we please have everyone's name, like, written out for, you know, complete?
Absolutely.
Because I, for one, feel a lot better about the future of this nation after doing this board.
Yes, and.
Brian, the
and,
president.
Charles?
I'm Charles Karcher, and Karcher is spelled Karcher.
And Ashley?
Okay, I got that one.
And, actually, it's Brian,
Yes, Ryan Bosback, and that's B-A-U-S-B-A-C-K.
B-A-U-S-B-A-C-K.
and Cheyenne,
Yeah, Cheyenne, C-H-U-Y-E-N-N-E, and then Lauterberg, L-A-U-T-E-R-B-E-R-G.
Okay.
I'm sorry that we didn't have placards in front of each one of these students, and I'm sorry that their, coaches weren't here to explain that this is a national format used by the high schools across the nation. It's very familiar to them, it's unknown to us. I felt a little bit lost. I felt that we needed to know a little bit more about what was happening, and they did email it to us, and we probably should have printed it out. So we're at fault. I would like to adopt all 4 of these young people and then clone them, because I think they were absolutely astounding.
I know how to clone them.
Yeah. And
That's what I think.
Steve, how much time do you need for what you're doing?
Go right ahead, Steve.
Oh, 10 minutes, I guess.
Why don't you go ahead and do it?
Okay.
And then-
Sure.
We can just put this-
Watch out for the camera. Come follow me. Put the boxes on the desk. Oh, he said no. He said no.
You know, we have the Republican Party, and we have the Democrat Party, and we are a republic, and with a republic, we are to protect our freedom versus the tyranny of big government. So if you would like to have a copy of this, we'd be happy to email it to you.
So write your name and email down.
If you just email it on the sheet, we could just pass it around,
I'll leave it at the front desk.
or I'll leave it here. And if you'd like that, then you can send it to other people.
What's the point of the
So,
box?
I have
You don't know?
a simple question about federal regulations, and I thought that it'd be good to have a visual. So would you be all right to put the regulations here? Okay, come on, just put the regulations on the
You guys
desk.
go put it on that desk.
That's number 8, I think.
I won't interfere. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, there's a few more regulations than you probably prepared. You're more than welcome. It turns out that in 2012, which is 4 years ago, the federal regulations totaled 175 pages. At a cost to the American consumer of $1.5 trillion a year. And with 175 pages, neither the regulators nor the regulated know what's in these boxes. So, the regulations aren't keeping us safe. And the question is,
Can you use the microphone, please?
Sure. Can I have the last box? All right, so what I'm saying is this. In 2012, federal regulations totaled 175,000 pages. at a cost to the American consumer of $1.5 trillion a year. Senator Mike Lee states that for every page of laws passed, 800 pages are added to the federal regulations. So the situation is actually 4 years worse than what you're looking at. Neither the regulators nor the regulated know what the regulations are. So the question is, which regulations do we keep? Would you, either side, use the preamble of our Constitution to prioritize? And if not, what priorities would you use to create functional regulations? Anybody care to answer? The question is, would you use the preamble of our Constitution, which tells you the purpose of our government, to prioritize which of these regulations you want to keep? Right? Because at this point, nobody knows what's in these boxes. Not the regulators, not the regulated. So, why not use it? Would you use the Constitution, or would you have other priorities? Who would like to?
Well, personally, I feel that I would definitely want to prioritize simplifying these regulations so that people could actually understand what's in them, and also so I could see all of you lovely people around these boxes. Maybe. But I think that it seems a little bit excessive to have all these regulations. I mean, I understand that the country is complex. This is a very large nation, and so therefore, obviously, we need. There are a lot of problems, and therefore, those problems need to be dealt with. Obviously, in order to deal with those problems, we need a regulation in order to do that. But I think that we definitely need to simplify those regulations so that we can understand what is actually being regulated, so that people don't misunderstand what's being regulated, and so they can understand what the laws are, so they can actually feel like they can participate in their government. Because I think that's what they were saying. People are capable of self-government, but they're not taking advantage of the self-government because they feel it's too complex. So if we simplify it, then maybe the self-government will work better. And I think that there's no way that four boxes of these even could probably protect people in the United States just as well as all of these boxes and promote the general welfare just as the preamble states just as well. So.
I think that when it comes to the question of what regulations should be prioritized over others, I think that we do need to look at the preamble of the Constitution, and we do need to understand that the government is there to protect the people, to protect our freedoms that we have today. Well, the ones that we think we have today, our government is doing a super job of that. But we need to protect people, our